everybody back to Bit About Crypto. I'm David James, the Job Whisperer. And welcome to, it must be 2 p.m. California time, right? 5 p.m. in New York, East Coast, because you're hearing to a new episode of Bit About Crypto, and you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. And once again, I'm with my co-host, Dave Hampton, the robo-recruiter. How you been?
Doing well.
So we actually are the owners of Blockchain Recruiters, and recently we've repurposed our entire recruiting firm solely to be in the blockchain space because we'd had enough of what?
Construction.
Yeah, some construction. And, and COVID really changed a lot of things. So just for your listeners, this show is a human interest story. We bring a lot of people in. We bring a lot of guests. We bring a lot of opinions. And ultimately, the thing they have in common is that crypto is in their life somehow, or it found them somehow, and that's what we're about. So I want to get this out of the way early because we're not going to go back to it later. So if you're looking for a job in crypto and you want to get a hold of me, you can get us at blockchainrecruiters.net, net. And if you want to get a hold of me personally, I'm the BTC Recruiter I'm at the BTC Recruiter on Twitter. That's what I am, right? And if you want to send a resume and an email, send it to Dave. Dave.
Yeah, if you want a response.
Dave at blockchainrecruiters.net. All right?
You can also call me.
Yeah, you can call him. If you want to talk to him, there it is. Putting that out there. Okay, 858 for those of you on Spotify and Apple.
254-6938.
That's right. And so the purpose of this show is for you to know that we aggregate talent in the blockchain worldwide. I don't care if it's technical or non-technical. We actually have people right now who are actually aggregating people. We put them in these big boxes, and then when you need them, we know how to get them. We're 1 degree of separation away. So yeah, that's the word from our sponsor. So, David, one of the things that you got me into was, so for our audience, so David and I met in 2014. He applied to be a job, to be a newbie recruiter. I was building recruiters from scratch for a recruiting firm, and he sent me a resume, and I threw it away. And then he called me, and I was going to blow him off. And he says, I said, can you call me back later? And he said, I'm calling from Afghanistan.
You said, can you call me back at 3 p.m.? This was a timed. I purposely called you around lunchtime, thinking I could catch you before you went to lunch.
Right.
And you said, can you call me back at 3? And I said, I could, but I'll probably be sleeping.
Yeah, I'm calling on a sat phone
because because I'm in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and right then I said, okay, if this dude's going to do that, then he's got what it takes to be a recruiter. I hired you. You told me you're going to be the best recruiter I ever hired, and like all that say that, I said, sure you are. You actually did, right? We found it necessary. I told you, hey, I'm leaving this firm, and you said, not without me, you're not.
That's right. That's right.
And so you foiled my plans, and we started a firm together.
We co-conspired.
Right. Yeah. But one of the things that you challenged me on while we were together was you said, hey, how often do you read? And it's just like my reading game got weak. And you said, I read a book a month, right? And I started literally looking to different things to read, right? And so I actually found this one author who was like speaking on things that every time he'd speak to me, through the written correspondence he put in various publications, I would go, wow, I never thought about that. And so I kept looking for him. And then all of a sudden I saw that he had a Patreon channel, and I started following him back and forth. And to this day, my perception of crypto, a macro perception of crypto, and not necessarily what it does, but how it's going to occur and why the people will gravitate to it and why governments are running it. Every time I get a writing from him, or I see he's doing a YouTube channel or something like that, he has, since I'm a subscriber, he actually has something that comes out, a video that comes out on YouTube every Wednesday and every Sunday. And I flock to it like a fly to the flame. And I know that I spoke to you about it, but to this day, right, I still wonder where he's getting this information because it resonates with me true. And before we get to him, the whole thing about Bitcoin, when I think about the Bitcoin argument, I look about the people who I think are the smartest. I think about Michael Saylor, so much smarter than me. I think about Preston Fish. I think about Jeff Booth. I think about Robert Breedlove. I think about these people, when I listen to them speak, it's like they're so much smarter than me. And universally, they say, hey, Bitcoin is the way. But I don't know if I'm putting him on blast too much, but I almost think he has got this alien way of amassing correct knowledge that resonates only at the highest vibration. Right? And how many times have I actually said to you in the office, hey, Tom Luongo said? How many times have I quoted Tom Luongo to you?
Countless, I'm assuming.
Right. Oh, now you're assuming. Wow. Wow. How to not become a co-host on my show, right? Just the guest.
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. It's that
lot,
many. Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said countless,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Nice save.
yeah.
Anyhow, with no further ado, I'm so fortunate, so flattered, so honored to have on today's show, Tom Luongo. Thank you so much.
David, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for the very, very, very kind words.
Yeah. So, Tom, other than your current, the way you actually occur as a pontificator of all things political and accurate, let's talk about how you came into the world, like from birth to like high school. I know you're from upstate New York. What was your socioeconomic situation like?
I grew up, dad was NYPD. Mom was a nurse at a local psychiatric hospital. I grew up in upstate New York, Orange County. I went to, for anybody who cares, I went to Monroe Woodbury High School in Central Valley, right off of the interchange between the New York State Turnpike and Route 32. For those of you who know that area, like right over the hill from West Point. Right over the
I know that area.
Yeah, David worked at West Point.
I used to work at West Point, yeah.
Okay, so I grew up within 20 minutes of West Point.
So near Cornwall, essentially, right?
Yeah, well, no, actually the next town over from Cornwall. As a matter of fact, my property line, my parents' property line of the house that I grew up on, the back half of the development that I lived in was actually the Cornwall School District.
Oh, okay.
So from my house north was Monroe Woodbury, and from my house south of my house was all Cornwall. And I had friends who went to Cornwall, and so I grew up pretty much a suburban middle class white kid, Gen X and Star Wars fan. Like this is my gig, and had my first paper out at 12.
Same.
Worked at that same local private psychiatric hospital, washing dishes and cutting grass and all of that stuff, and for both my mom and my dad. And because my dad, when he retired from the NYPD, he took over the maintenance department there. So that was my formative years in that respect, and like the work ethic and all of that. It's just came from there. But it was a middle class Italian working class household, I left. I just knew one thing when I graduated high school. I didn't want to be in New York anymore. That was it. So I went to the school at University of Florida in Gainesville, and I've been there in and around that area ever since. I got a degree in chemistry and a minor in English literature. I'm still two classes away from a degree in English, and studied, British American poetry and, physical chemistry. And I could have either become a non-professional poet and starved to death, or I could have easily gone to graduate school and done high energy.
It's not too late. Get a beret and go to Starbucks. You're there.
I don't want to. No, I gave that life up years ago. I have a friend of mine who's taken that. I have a friend of mine who got his law degree. He practices law and publishes poetry on the side. That's his gig. It's
like Wallace Stevens, right? Doctor and then poet.
Yeah,
right?
No, yeah, absolutely. Like Wallace Stevens, who was an insurance adjuster and the only one of that era of American and British poets of the modernist era who actually had a real job. The rest of them were all ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
Or in and out of mental institutions.
So you always reference hockey. So I'm assuming you were like a Sabres fan, or
I was.
Yeah, right.
I still am. I just don't follow the sport anymore.
So are you more hockey than anything else?
I am at this point, but here's the thing. Here's the gig. So coming out of, like during the 90s, I grew up a football and baseball fan in the United States. You live in my area of the world. You are a Yankees fan. And then eventually, I had to give them up because of Steinbrenner, and then I understood that the National League game was better, and, committed heresy and became a Mets fan.
Wow. So my brother's a Mets fan.
Never did I drift from the Giants to the Jets. I mean, there's just certain things.
You have some dignity.
You don't like to lose.
Some dignity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I never once rooted for the Red Sox. So, but eventually both of those sports, I just hated the corporatization of both of those sports. It just became very, very obnoxious. Certainly football became scripted to the point of it wasn't even interesting. Baseball coming out of the first strike and lockout,
94,
it just became long ball, and it wasn't interesting anymore. And I gravitated back towards hockey in the late 90s when I found like a cable again. I hadn't had cable through college, right? I didn't have cable even after I had my first job coming out of college for fiber. I didn't get cable until the late 90s. So I'm watching ESPN. I'm watching the Sabres play the Flyers and, Stanley Cup playoff match in the late 90s. And I'm like, it was the Mike Pekka era of the Sabres. And I watched him climb Eric Lindros and beat the crap out of him. And I'm like, you're my team. And that was it. And I just remembered falling in love, how much I loved the sport, even when I watched it briefly back during the 80 around the Lake Placid Miracle on Ice and all that. I was into the sport for a few years. And then what happened after that was just really weird. I started blogging in, say, 2003 with the goal of being able to write something that I could submit to Lou Rockwell over at LouRockwell.com and actually have him published. About 18 months of doing that, eventually I sent him something that I thought was decent. Eventually, coming out of the NHL lockout, I started a blog to write about the Sabres because nobody in the hockey blogging sphere was covering it. So I said, I'll start something. And I wound up in the hockey blogging world and met, all the guys and wound up at that point being this is very, very early on when the blogosphere was very, very, early on where, where RSS was still not a universal thing. I mean, it was really early, right? So, where people's blog roles mattered, let's put it that way, because that's how we found other blogs and that's how we found other people. And I fell in with, Eric McElwain over at Off My Opinion and James Myrtle and all these other guys. And we just became the vanguard of that. We became the vanguard of the hockey blogging sphere. We eventually all got picked up by AOL. And I wrote for AOL Fan House for a while. They weren't paying us, but we got with the sirens called. They would pay us $8 a blog. I'm like, ooh, I get paid to blog. Like, this is cool. And so we did that for a while, and that was fun. And eventually, it fell apart. And then eventually, I just kind of, over time, I eventually just drifted away from it all because, as I was working professionally as a chemist, and at that point, I was living away from home and working on a research project for. I could go into this, the high energy. Electrochemistry. I was doing electroless nickel boron.
And to talk about like meeting Camille.
Oh shit! I met Camille in college.
His wife.
I for me, it was just love at first sight. It took her about 2 years to figure that out.
I got a story like that with my current wife. I love at first sight. We went from drop dead creep to you're everything I've ever dreamed of. But it took her.
I only got that about 2 years ago, to be honest. We've been doing this for 30 years. We'll be married 30 years in February.
Well,
actually,
congratulations on that.
I mean, she's the greatest woman in the world. And one of these days I have to have her on my live stream and we need to talk movies because she's the best. She's got the best story instincts of any screenwriter I've ever seen.
So tell me, how did crypto find you?
I found it by mistake.
Okay. No mistakes.
I was
heavily,
okay. So I'll explain. This is interesting. So in 2010, right, we're between the 2008 presidential run of Ron Paul and the 2012 Ron Paul. By that point, I'm kind of a semi-regular over at Lou Rockwell. I've got, I can email Lou and he'll respond to me. But at that point, there was the site called the Daily Paul. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but it was a great site that just aggregated everything, all mentions of Ron Paul, and then people around that, and the Mises Institute and antiwar.com and all that. So there was the Daily Paul was kind of the place where, pre like Zero Hedge and all that, where those people got together. And one day I'm trolling the Daily Paul and I see over on the sidebar a thread in one of the and the latest threads in the comment, the message boards was, hey, check out this thing called this new alternative currency called Bitcoin. Now I had already been in the alternative currency space. I had, been in the Liberty Dollar and buying gold and silver and all of that for years. I already had effectively alternate currency ennui because I watched all these projects start and then they didn't go anywhere. Right. So, or they were shut down by the government in the case of the Liberty Dollar. And so I clicked on this thing and I was heavily thinking at that point about a creative project. And I wanted to do a foundation like story about the corruption that based on around the corruption of an uncorruptible currency. And I'd been thinking about it for months about how to crack this thing and yada, yada, yada. And I didn't know anything about cryptography. So I was going off into, into la la land. And then I clicked on this thing, got in there, immediately read the Bitcoin white paper and went, oh, they did it. They created the uncorruptible currency. I get it. I read the white paper and I immediately grokked what was going on. This was late June 2010. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I downloaded the client. I mined a couple of blocks. Some of the original 50 Bitcoin blocks I mined on an old Intel CPU. This was in the days when you could individually mine Bitcoin on an
don't
Intel
tell me you
CPU.
lost those coins.
Oh, they're all gone.
Of course they are.
Yeah, they got stolen off of Mt. Gox.
Okay. All right.
So I probably would have sold them, at the first sign of $100.
Yeah, I get it. Go on.
So I don't even feel bad about it anymore. Because why even? But I can tell you that when they got stolen, and that was they were around $2.20 a piece, $2.20 a piece, and I had more than 200 Bitcoin. Because I sold an old video card on like the original version of Craigslist for Bitcoin,
right,
to a guy for 200 Bitcoin. No lie, an old AMD, 3000 series or whatever video card I had at the time. And
12 million in today's dollars.
At least, yeah.
Yeah,
right?
no, exactly, right. $12 million.
$12 million. There you go. And I was just kind of, trading them. I remember getting on the Mt. Gox when they were trading at 5.5 cents a piece, and being so cheap, I wouldn't pay 5.6.
Okay.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because I didn't believe in Bitcoin. I thought it was cool. I was noodling around writing some stuff and, behind the scene, by 2011, I was unemployed for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The job I had down in South Florida ended. I tried my hand at, day trading and, living off of my ability to time markets, and that ended badly. Eventually I got picked up by Newsmax in 2013 after I started writing for Seeking Alpha to pay the bills, making 30, 40, $50 an article. And of course I'm writing about stuff that nobody gives anything about. Right? I'm writing about Gazprom in 2013, and you wrote for Seeking Alpha, and you wrote an article about Gazprom. You made $12, right? So because it was all just based, penny a page hit. And I had a couple other gigs where I, we get paid $10 an article and $5 an article, and did SEO work on Elance and all sorts of stuff. But no, I really did pay my dues, like writing like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of words a day just to make $30, because there was no call for a chemist in his early 40s with a BS and no MBA or master's.
Yeah, you as a recruiter, we get that. But then a shift came, right? Because you do believe in Bitcoin, and you believe you believe in some others too.
I believed in Bitcoin as a concept. I never, once the coins got stolen, I'll be honest, I got discouraged, and I said they ignored it for years, back in all the way until about 2017, to be honest with you. And I didn't even go back in and buy anything or even look around. I people would ask me about it all the time because I knew about it. I understood, I'm like, this is really great technology. I just don't think it's going to go anywhere. Like, just don't see. I would check in on it every few months, and I'm like, I'm not seeing anything here. I don't see there. I wish I did, but I didn't. Right. And if I had the vision that I have now, oh yeah, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation.
No,
because I own my own private island.
Yeah, no,
I'd be one of those. I'd be one of those guys with a wallet that has so many Bitcoin in it I haven't moved that I would just wouldn't even.
You would have people who had people to get to you if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, seriously. So my marriage would have been dead because I would have been banging a cabana chick. I mean, we joke about my wife and I joke about this all the time. Like, yeah, if we had made that much money at that point in our
lives, she'd be okay with it. She'd be okay.
She wouldn't have been. I don't know that she would have been okay with it, but eventually it would have probably killed the marriage.
The woman is never okay. Right?
No, the woman is never okay.
No, it's only the man can't be monogamous, right?
I thought you were saying she was, but go on.
All right. So, no, that we both had discussed this multiple times in the past. We both go, yeah, that wouldn't have worked. It's actually a good thing that you lost those Bitcoin. It was actually her fault because she used my computer once, got a keylogger looking for my World of Warcraft account, and the guy was able to get not only that but my Mt. Gox account and stole my Mount and logged into Mt. Gox, stole everything. They were holding everything on chain at that point, and it was gone. They were done.
So here's the thing. I would be remiss not to talk about these things because I have you, because I always say, I wonder what Tom would say. I talked to my friend who's been on the show, right? And he goes by Uncle Jim. He's the guy that got me into Bitcoin, taught me about Bitcoin. He's the guy that I got my first email from. He's always been like my older brother, and we've been friends for over 30 years. And we talk about what would Luong was thinking. So I want to we're going to come back because all these things are going to tie into as it relates to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Sure.
But I want you to talk about, first off, either the election of 2022 or the infrastructure bill. Now, I personally don't think the infrastructure bill is ever going to be put on Joe Biden's desk. I don't.
Nope.
Okay, and so what do you see happening in the election of 2022 as it relates to the House and the Senate?
Here's my caveat: having not really looked at how well the states have hardened their election laws, and I'm not talking about the places where they're actively not going to harden their election laws, and we're talking about places like Virginia and California and New York and the rest of them. If everybody who suspected the levels of fraud that we saw in 2020 hardens their election laws so that they look like the situation in Florida is now. You saw what happened in Florida in 2020. We hardened our election laws between 2016 and 2020.
Okay.
And Florida, and he won Florida in a walk. And Florida's this. I don't even know that even the safe Democratic districts in Florida are safe anymore. I think they're all purple. I have friends who will disagree with me about that. I think that if the fraud isn't off the charts, then the Republicans will take the House. And I don't just mean like rhinos. I mean, honest to God, patriots, for lack of a better term. They may be Trump Republicans. They may be what I like to call Trump tards. It doesn't matter. You'll see a 50 to 60 seat swing in the House. You'll see at least 3 or 4 in the Senate.
Okay.
So even if any of these bills get through, they will be repealed. I don't think they'll ever get through I don't think at this point the infrastructure bill will make the light of day. It's very clear if you listen to the way the Democrats are horse trading.
Yeah, talk about this. Go in detail on this.
Yeah, no, the way the Democrats are horse trading this, they're horse trading away all of the tax increases, except for the wealth tax, because they want all the regulation. They want the wealth tax in place because they think that that's going to win them votes with the angry millennials,
including the capital gains, right?
Right. Well, no, they're willing to trade away capital gains.
Okay.
They're willing to trade away SALT deduction. They already have. They're willing to trade away all the middle class tax rises, all that stuff. Because you got to realize that middle class now in America, like it or not, you can't survive a middle class existence.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah, well, I agree with that.
Right.
But let's just kind of talk about it. The rate at which the income level you need to maintain even a reasonable middle class lifestyle in the United States is rising like 8% to 10%.
It's like 300,000.
I wouldn't say that. I would say 80.
Oh, okay.
I'd say 80.
Well, I'm thinking about
I used to believe that I could live a middle class lifestyle of $45,000 a year.
No, I'm talking about where I live in California, right?
You can live in California. I live in Florida. I live in upstate Florida.
Yeah.
You couldn't do like my property taxes are $1,500 a year. I own a house of 15 acres.
No. California property taxes are 20,000.
I mean, in states like Texas and Florida, that makes sense. 80,000. I mean, I remember getting out of school teaching English, high school English. I was making 40,000. I felt like I was living like a king, in Dallas, right? I mean, it was.
Dude, we were able to live on less than $30,000 a year, even in Gainesville, which is should live central. No, because there is no better way of putting that. I promise you, I wouldn't use 4-letter words, but there's no other way to describe Gainesville other than that.
Then it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
you used to be able to live here for that price. You can't anymore. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's not possible. So, when you really start to do the math, it's getting really bad really quickly. And I think that they're trying to play class warfare and eat the rich and hope that that's going to keep them from their support cratering amongst millennials. It's not, because they're the ones even more angry about where things have gone than anyone else, because they're the ones getting screwed worse than everybody else. So you're going to see so they're willing to horse trade away all of the progressives' talking points, all the money, most of the tax increases, but they still want the wealth tax. And then they want all the regulations. They want the Janet Yellen, Gary Gensler inspired, Davos inspired legislation and regulations that would effectively ban crypto, that would effectively turn everybody who buys and sells a crypto and turn them into a broker, and then regulate them like a broker. They want full access to our bank accounts. They want full access to everything. Okay. That is what they're not willing to horse trade away. So the gig here is to understand that the Democrats are desperate to keep everybody focused on the money and not focused on the language in the bill, where if you really read between the lines from people like Manchin and even Sinema to a lesser extent, and now even, like Mitt Romney, are all feeling the heat from Wall Street, who are the ones that are making sure that these people get reelected, because who the hell is giving them money other than Wall Street and Amazon at this point?
Right.
Okay. They're all saying, no, this cannot pass. They're going to destroy our ability to even have entrepreneurs here in the United States.
Okay. So separate okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the infrastructure bill and the budget together, it doesn't really matter. Both of them together represent effectively a coup by European commies. It's really just that simple. I hate to be reductionist about it, but why go even into any more detail than that? They literally just want to destroy the ability of anybody to build wealth, enter the middle class, and then maintain any wealth. They want the right to be able to tax that away completely, more so than they already do, which is insane. They already tax almost all the profit away in the first place.
So we're coming into an election year, right? Will the Democrats abandon this idea because they know that they need to get reelected? When does the chat on this stop?
Probably around March, right?
Okay.
Once we start getting in the primary season, and a whole lot of moderate Democrats start showing up to challenge the AOCs and the rest of them in the primary. And they're not going to get any party support whatsoever. But at the end of the day, the party is just a mailing list. I mean, I used to do Libertarian Party politics. And I can tell you that when we used to show up on street corners or at farmers markets or whatever, just to like do a signature drive or do a thing, anything, just to have a table, like at presence at the county fair, you would think that this is normal. The Republicans and the Democrats, both, this is 20 years ago, will come up there and goes, wow, you guys are really organized. Like there's 12 of us.
So
we're the whole Alachua County Libertarian Party, all 12 of us. I got them to show up. And they're like, you guys are so organized, because the parties literally are mailing lists of donors and nothing else.
So I want to ask you about Joe Manchin. Do you think, and this is I've had this in my idea, do you think he's trying to be a moderate centrist so he can run for president in 2024?
No, I don't. I think he's trying to survive, because West Virginia is coal country, and West Virginia is a hell of a lot more conservative than anybody thinks they are.
Right.
And just like West turned, Virginia wants to secede from Virginia, right?
Right.
And become part of West Virginia. I think Manchin just like staying in power. He likes being a senator. So he's not dumb. And I think that, and at the end of the day, the Democrats are not a party.
Yeah, that's correct.
They're a loose coalition, as my partner Dexter White put it in a podcast the other day. They're a coalition of the aggrieved.
Oh,
it's the best way to describe them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And now the aggrieved are like, what are you doing to us?
Okay. So
now you're screwing us.
All right.
They don't have a party platform.
So you said something that I found very interesting. I'm going to give you credit for it. You said if they're talking 25th Amendment, they're talking Kamala. If they're talking impeachment, they're talking both Joe and Kamala go. Right.
Yes.
Even though the votes probably won't be there to move away. Right. I mean, in the
Pelosi
Senate
comes in if that happens.
Yeah,
That would
No,
happen.
Pelosi's not going. Pelosi doesn't want the job. She's going to. She floated the idea as a horse trade the other day to say, look, just pass the infrastructure bill and I'll retire.
Yeah, but about
Wow.
that. So in 2024, I mean, it's just prognosticate on the Democratic side. How do you see that playing out in 2024? Barring that Joe doesn't hit his head on the Air Force One steps and go into a coma, right? Well, I mean, he keeps
I
slipping.
don't think the Democrats have anybody in 2024, and I think whoever they put up will be a sacrificial lamb to the Republicans. I think Davos has already bracketed that they're going to lose the midterms and they're going to lose
Before we get to
the
Davos,
2024 election.
We're going to talk about that.
I think that's part of the strategy. The strategy is to foment a war between us and China between now and then, prosecuted by Republicans.
Okay, so let me say something to you. So I know you're a libertarian, right?
Yep.
And when I
Makes two of us.
first saw Trump, right, as crass as he was, I thought he was a better alternative than Hillary. That's all I'm going to say about it, right? But
So
then,
did I.
but then he started losing me as just the school. When he debated Joe Biden, right? I said, you're just a school bar bully. You've lost me, right? I'm just saying he lost centrist Democrats. He lost centrist Republicans. So he lost that 30% in the middle from the 50-yard line. He lost them, right? Whether he lost the election, I don't want to get into that.
Right.
But I don't believe that he is going to be the one who's going to be the candidate in 2024.
I hope he's not.
Yeah.
Trump isn't by 2024. I mean, look, do I think that Trump has got his faculties? Yes. Do I think at 74 or 75 years old, whatever he'll be by then, will he still have those faculties? Most likely. He's in good shape. I mean, he's in good shape in that respect. He's got good genes, yada, yada, yada. And I just think he's too disagreeable to
Okay.
Yeah.
So who?
I think he's just too disagreeable to get Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's like there's a part of me that just thinks that the guy is
Yeah.
just like too larger than life to allow something like a disease to take a hold of him. Right?
Yeah, no, it's
he's just gonna stop one day.
No,
He's gonna be
it's like he'll outlive Barack Obama on spite. Right?
Yeah, well, that too, right.
Yeah, just because even though Barack Obama's 20 years younger, all I'm saying about it. But what I'm saying to you is, it's so, like, who do you think the Republicans put forward in 2024? I mean,
it's a good
anybody.
question, and I'll tell you that I hope it's not Ron DeSantis. His work here in Florida isn't done yet.
Well, he already said he's not, so that's a problem if he goes from not to yes.
He'll change.
Well, you see,
he'll
my
change his
problem.
mind.
My problem is that they're puffing him up to give him making him think that he has the opportunity.
Right.
Okay. They always try to puff up a guy who is not quite ready for the job
Right. So do you think
in order to destroy his political career.
Okay. Do you think like a Tom Cotton or a Hawley or a
No,
Jim
I don't
Jordan?
think it'll be a neocon. I think that if anybody at this point, it won't. I think we needed a firebrand in 2016.
Right. Got it.
We needed fraud in 2020. And I think the guy who's finally starting to get some hair on his chin and on his balls is Rand Paul. Rand Paul comes across as a beta male, right? He doesn't have presidential thing, but I don't know that
That's
he's not,
needed. Right.
But I don't know that that's not the right persona for what we're going to need in 2024.
I get it.
It's not even just my personal opinion. The guy personally took down Dr. Fauci, who is now being thrown under the bus as chum over this. I mean, dude, you think that the Beagle story wasn't leaked to PETA on purpose?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Okay.
Like, please don't treat me like I'm stupid. Like they now need to get rid of Fauci because Fauci's outlived his usefulness, right?
So this IRS Snoop bill, right, was 600, now 10,000, but that doesn't see the light of day unless it's stuck into the infrastructure, correct?
Yes.
All right. So that's dead as long as
I think it's all dead. I think all the crypto regulation that Yellen has put in is dead. I think it's all dead. I think it's all dead because Wall Street said, "Look, this is the way we go forward as a banking as a going concern because commercial banking is dead."
So
who keeps checking deposits in a world of crypto?
No, I understand. I get that. Before we come right into crypto, but I want to talk to you more about. So we got the by the time this podcast airs, right, the deadline for October 31st will have come and passed, right? And the highway bill and et cetera, et cetera. So talk about that, and also like the shutdown on the 3rd, because I personally think Mitch McConnell played brilliantly. Everyone says that he capitulated. I said, no. Yeah, no, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to get an 11. We're going to do it, but we're never doing it again. We're never doing it again. And he said to everybody, and it's his PR campaign, we're never doing it again. So play the tape for me. What's going to happen? Okay. What's that going to mean?
So the debt ceiling thing is going to wind up. The Democrats, look, this is the way this plays. The Democrats are trying to manufacture a narrative as to why we need these spending bills. Right? Mm-hmm. We have raging inflation. They're manufacturing a supply chain crisis out in the port in California. Right. To
justify the infrastructure. See, if we had better infrastructure, we wouldn't have these problems. Even though
it's not just that. It's that they're trying to manufacture. It's part of that. It's that they're just trying to manufacture that we need the money in order to get this to build this country back better. Which the way we build it back better is to tell the governor of California you don't get any more money until you allow trucks older than 3 years old onto your roads to go to the ports to get filled up and take stuff points east, because that's what's stopping all of this for the ports from operating. It's a simple rule that Amazon understood, and Walmart knew was a problem 6 years ago was coming, and tried desperately to rejigger their supply chains on, but there's only so much you can do. Supply chains are not things you just change overnight. Okay. So, you can send more stuff through the Panama Canal until some dothead, draws a cock and balls in the sea and then rams it into the side of the Panama Canal, like they did with the Suez. So you don't think that's going to happen like next week?
So bring me full speed. Like what are they going to do about like this 31 October, which is no longer a date right now that we're getting closer and nothing's going to be passed. Right. And what's going to happen with the debt ceiling? Tell me how that plays out. I mean, is the government going to shut down?
The Democrats are eventually going to have to raise the debt ceiling. What the Democrats are doing is that they are blackmailing the world by saying, look, remember, what Davos is really trying to do is to create chaos on Capitol Hill in order to blackmail the global capital. Like the people who manage all the money are looking at the stuff going on Capitol Hill going, where do I put my money? Can't put it into China. Their banking sector it's closed. One, it's closed, and two, their entire property market is starting to implode.
Right.
Can't put it into Europe. There are basket case. Can't keep it in the United States. Who the hell knows what these people are going to come up with next week? They're all senile. They don't want anything to move. What they want is they want all the money to move to Europe, right? Because that's the only way Europe survives is if the money that currently gets invested here in the United States moves into Europe.
Okay.
The Russian markets aren't big enough. Think about where you have to think of global capital like water after a hurricane.
Okay.
Give me a couple seconds.
Sorry.
So once you understand that, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep the inflow from coming into the United States and flowing out of Europe, even though, because anybody with eyes to see can see that Europe is the most vulnerable guy in a rising interest rate, strong dollar.
Yeah.
Environment.
They're the first to fall, and then
they would be the first to fall.
Yeah,
so Jerome Powell sterilizing $1.2 trillion worth of stimulus effectively within the reverse repo market by raising the rate from 0% to 0.05% to 5 basis points, moved $1.2 trillion over 4 months into that facility. Took that off the market. It took the multiplier of that money off the market. It drained the Eurodollar markets. It's crashed the euro from $1.22 to $1.155. Okay. It's raised interest rates across the board in the United States and in Europe by 50 basis points, by 0.5%. Who can afford that? We can. They can't. That's why they're trying to get rid of Powell. That's why the insider trading scam against Powell. That's why all of this stuff. So now what the blackmail here is, if you don't give us our infrastructure bill and our spending, and you don't let us have our commie takeover, what we're going to do? We're going to default in the debt.
Got it.
They're literally arguing against themselves. It's like the scene in Blazing Saddles when Cleavon Little's holding the gun to his head.
Yeah. Don't say it. Don't.
Dare me not to shoot myself. Like, no, please. Just please do so and put us all in your fucking misery.
So this comes back to what you're talking about right now, right? With the inflation that's going on.
Yes.
Fed interest rates up, or another lockdown to stop the money velocity. What are they going to do?
Right, so that's where they are. So the Fed refuses. The Fed is trying to taper, which is a smart thing to do. And everybody who's only focused domestically sees this as a policy error. I'm like, they're not raising interest rates or tapering QE because of a policy error. They're doing it because the savings rate is now below 5% to 3.5%. Whenever the savings rate drops below 5%, the Fed ends a QE program. Go back to 2011, chart the savings rate versus when they started and stopped QE. I used to publish this chart all the time, and you can see it. It's a 1-to-1 correlation. Like literally. Okay. So that's all the Fed is doing. They're doing what they always do. They're going, oh, look, the people aren't saving. They're spending their money. They don't need the support anymore. So they end QE and they start trying to raise rates. That's what they should do. And by doing that, they also are stuffing the US banks full of collateral. That's what the reverse repo facility is doing. Right, because it's a reverse repo is the Fed buys cash and sends out and lends out securities. So those securities are held as collateral against all this savings that people have been stuffing into their bank accounts, afraid of the future. That because your deposits in a bank are the bank's liability. They need either collateral or they need to lend that money out. If they can't lend the money out, right, then they have to have some other kind of collateral in order to offset the liability, which is your deposit. So with a massive savings rate that happened after COVID 9/11 started, then the banks were screaming for capital and the money market rates went negative and zero at the short end and all of that stuff. So think this through one step further. The Democrats are saying the thing that is the United States greatest asset is that when push comes to shove, we don't default on the debt. We've always paid. Even when we defaulted technically under the Clinton administration, eventually everybody got paid.
Right. Okay? Well, what about a CBDC as the false flag on this is how we don't default? I mean,
the Fed is not going. Is nowhere near the central bank digital currency.
Okay, so
Powell gives it lip service simply because he has to. You can't. We will be the last country in the world to go on a central bank digital currency. If they happen, okay, they will be the last. We will be the last because we're the world's reserve currency.
Yeah, it doesn't seem necessary.
The European Union wants to go there first. It's the only way they get out from underneath their debt load is to issue perpetual debt, to default on their debt, issue perpetual debt at a quarter point, and then put everybody on a digital euro. Okay.
So here's what I have to talk. And the reason I'm jumping is that I could talk to you for 4 or 5 hours. Okay, but my audience, they probably after they hear you, will do it. But when I bring you back, but also my friend Jim says he said specifically about the Bitcoin futures ETF, and he says at first I wasn't worried about this, but people haven't had the pain that I Jim and Luongo have had as it relates to gold and silver.
Yep. No. Yeah. The Bitcoin futures ETF is just another another false liquidity sink in order to try and bleed off investor energy away from Bitcoin.
Not to raise it up the price and then crash it.
No, I don't think it's not as a pump and dump. It's not. It's actually not that at all. If you look since the thing started trading, Bitcoin hasn't moved.
Well, yeah, I mean, it went from 60 to 67.
It's moved right up to its all-time high, and it's kind of sitting there, and it's playing around, and it should do that for a few days before it goes higher. Mm-hmm. But the total capital in the Bitcoin market. One of our patrons, one of our brethren, posted a chart up on our private Slack server this morning. Which, by the way, for all patrons, I have run a private Slack server.
Yeah, well, let's take an opportunity.
That has an aggregation of, I think, some of the smartest freaking people in the world. They keep me on my toes.
1 second.
And published a great candlestick chart of the total market cap of the crypto market this morning. And I took one look at it and went, oh, look, that's That's a breakout on the weekly chart. Like,
Hold on, Tom.
Tuesday,
I
dude.
want to give you the opportunity to plug that. So let's your Slack
You can
server.
do that at, you can follow me over at Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns. You can go over to my website at tomluongo.me. There's a link in the sidebar if you want to do so. There's always a link at the bottom of every one of my articles.
And I'm just going to say this. I endorse you. I endorse Tom Luongo, okay? If you want to be learned, you want to expand your consciousness, and if you want to know the why behind the why, you follow this dude. But anyhow, okay, so let's talk about the possible fall of the Republic.
Oh, man.
Well, okay.
We don't have enough time for that.
Look, I've been handicapping it since 2007.
This is not we're so divided. People say, "Hey, we're headed towards civil war." It's like, what are you talking about?
But at the same time, we don't want to actually go there yet. As it would solve so many problems.
It's a last
it
resort.
would also give Davos the win that they want. From the moment I said coming into the election, and I know you probably read this, which is that this is the most consequential and irrelevant election of all time, because no matter what happens, Davos wins.
We're talking about 2020.
We're talking about 2020.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
In that, if Biden wins, they get their puppet installed, and then they run the table and they install a whole bunch of Democrats, and then we get what we're getting. And honestly, I firmly believe that they already expected to have gotten all of this done, but now they're scrambling, and it's nearly November, and they don't have it done yet. They don't have any of it done yet. But that's an aside. Or we get Trump, and the country is more divided than it ever has been.
Well,
and it sets the country on the path towards civil war, or at the very least towards secession, because the Davos-controlled blue states would absolutely have already seceded if Trump had been reelected.
So
they would have already tried.
I just oppose when I just sit back and think about it, right? I believe that there's the atheists and there's theists, right? And I just believe that God is a divine ruler and he picks everybody. And I believe had Trump got in, I think it would have been worse for the Republican Party. It would have been worse for the country. I just do. And it's almost like now they're cannibalizing their own. They got what they wanted. They own all three. They own all three, and they own
all of it, and they can't get any of it done.
Yeah, right. And it's just like, and even the media is cannibalizing on them. And who's safe? Who's sacred? Right?
Nobody.
No.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when my first order effect was the last thing I want to do is have to go through it this way, because I didn't want to see that. Trump won the election, as far as I'm concerned. There's no doubt in my mind that Biden was selected, not elected. Fine. But now you got what you got, which is that when you push people farther away from what it is that they wanted, all you're doing is you're not winning. You think you're winning, but all you're doing is creating the very opposition, the irrational opposition to your rule. If you want to understand where we are, I recommend everybody go out and watch Dune, because we're the Fremen. And if you know the story, you know what the Fremen do in the second half of the novel and in the subsequent novels.
No. Go tell the readers.
And
back it up
which
a little.
Is that these people who have been downtrodden and destroyed and beaten down and had everything taken away from them become the hardest, meanest, most unrelenting sons of bitches you ever saw, and they destroy all of the old order.
Kind of like what everybody did to Afghanistan. Not everybody in Afghanistan was Al-Qaeda, was with bin Laden. I personally believe that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda was 100 guys. And they had the greatest PR event for their cause that they could have ever done. They brought down those towers.
They Kaiser Soza'd everyone.
Yeah, they Kaiser Soza'd everybody. Exactly. And then all of a sudden now,
Well, no, but like Al-Qaeda was a CIA operation.
Correct.
Let's not kid ourselves.
No.
Like Obama created those guys, and they created ISIS in Syria, and they created HTS or whatever they were. The 94 different names that they've gone over in Idlib, and I can go on. We could spend an hour talking about the machinations in Syria, and how they've lost there. And I remember saying back in 2015, which you and I weren't, in each other's orbit back then, but I remember getting pushback from my editor over at Newsmax when I said I wrote the November issue for my newsletter and said Vladimir Putin's intervention in Syria is the most consequential geopolitical event of the 21st century and will now change the entire geopolitical map.
Yeah, well,
because in 6 weeks he's going to blow apart. Because in 6 weeks his Air Force is going to blow apart all of the myths and all of the narratives about the situation in Syria. And someone finally stood up to the empire and said, no. Well, and there's not going to be a damn thing that the empire can do about it.
Yeah, no, you're talking about Putin crossing Obama's many red lines.
Yeah, Putin intervening in Syria and bringing the Air Force in Syria in October of 2015.
Let's talk about that. So sometimes, there's this runaway train, right? There's a lot of things that could cause, disharmony or dysphoria here in America. It could be Taiwan being invaded by China. It could be Russia, Crimea, North Korea to South Korea, doubtful, right? But it could be one of those something Palestine, Israel. It could be one of those things.
Iran, Israel.
Yeah, it could be this. It could be one of those things that really all of a sudden just sets everything off. I mean, no one's talking about this.
China and Taiwan is the one that's going to force people's hands. I mean, that's going to force the U.S. hands.
It is, and I'll tell you
of all those scenarios, if you ask me,
you can see it, and I'll tell you how. Russia and Ukraine. We've already
been there.
We've already basically told them we don't have an answer to that.
Right.
And if the Ukrainians lose their minds and attack the Donbass, the Ukrainians are going to lose the entire southern half of the country.
It'll take care
all
of
the way to
itself.
Transnistria. In Moldova, and the Russians will own the entire northern border of the Black Sea, all the way to Odessa.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's a given. That was laid out by Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, to both Victoria Nuland 2 weeks ago and to Joe Biden and everybody in June. Okay. But the Ukrainians don't think they have any options at this point. And if Zelensky, so just the way things are going to work out, I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is going to happen is nothing. I think the Ukrainian government is going to implode. Kiev is going to be a mess. And eventually the Donbass will ask for accession into the Russian Federation, and then both Donetsk and Luhansk all the way to Crimea, so that there's a contiguous border with the peninsula, will become part of the Russian Federation. That's what's going to happen. Because if you look at the borders of Donetsk and Lugansk, that's the way it will play out.
But what I was saying was that Biden's not going to do anything.
No, Biden's not going to do anything. Davos is setting things up with COVID. It was the lab leak theory. The day that Rand Paul cornered Fauci and said, hey, I got you dead to rights. You guys created this gain of function in the Wuhan
gain of function research.
And the next day, the whole of the media, controlled by Davos, was out there going, yep, COVID started in a lab and it was foisted on us by China. This got Zero Hedge banned from Twitter, even suggesting that a year previously. This got everybody in alternative media deplatformed to even suggest this. And now all of a sudden, 12 hours after Anthony Fauci is cornered with perjury on the Senate floor by Rand Paul, the media then does a complete 180. Why would they do that? They would do that only because they know that the Democrats are going to get crushed in the midterms. They're going to lose both houses. Joe Biden is not going to survive cognitively. They're already turning on him. He'll be out of office by March in some way, March or April, no later.
Of 2022? Okay.
Yes, of this year coming up. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But let's put a number on it. March or April. I think he's got 5 months. And then once that started, what do you think? They can see into the future. The Republicans are going to take over. And what are they going to do from here on out? They're going to try and foment a war with China. The Biden administration has been the most diplomatically inept organization we have ever seen. Now, ask yourself the question: are these people really just incompetent, or are they being paid to be purposefully belligerent? Why did we put troops on the ground in Taiwan and then have the Wall Street Journal mention it 6 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, 4 to 6 weeks ago in public, such that the Chinese now have to respond to it? The Chinese have known there's been 24 military advisors on the ground in Taiwan for a year. But why all of a sudden does the Wall Street Journal make that public knowledge that the Chinese have to respond to? Okay. Start putting, these are the things you have to look at. Every time the United States does something provocative vis-a-vis Taiwan, it's being done on purpose to force the Chinese to not lose face and have to defend their one China policy.
Okay, here's the last thing.
Okay. And that's the thing that's where the Biden administration works for Davos. Davos wants a war between the US and China, because if the United States and China go to war, the capital then does what? Floods to Europe.
Print more money. Yeah.
Right. So
flood to Europe, because just like it ran away from Europe and Japan and during World War II, the place where that wasn't bombed back to the Stone Age was the United States. We sat there as the tax haven. All the capital came to us, invested. It created an entire lifetime's worth of economic
certainty, right?
Generational wealth.
Certainty and hegemony. Yeah. I mean, all that investment. We've just been living off that investment for 80 years. Well, guess what? The Europeans want that.
So let's bring it back.
They want their colonies back, man.
Yeah, they do.
These are the most racist people on the planet. They hate the Slavs and think they're dirty Untermensch. They hate the friggin' Chinese. They think they're just ants.
Yeah.
They hate the colonies because we stood up to them. Like, are you kidding me? We're turning the world over to German eugenicists, and we think this is a good freaking idea.
So what about crypto?
What about 80 years ago?
So crypto. Let's talk about how crypto, with all the dysphoria, all the dysfunctionality, crypto, a universal, right, impenetrable life. Yeah. Talk about. Now you take as much rope as you want on this. This is how we're ending. So go as long as you need to.
So the way I see crypto is this, and it's very complicated because it's very obvious that these people that we've been talking about for the last however long we've been chatting, for a little under an hour now, don't want any of this. They've been suppressing gold for God knows how long. They control the gold market. And they control the gold market because they mostly control the supply of physical gold, right? Because where does most of the physical gold in the world reside? In the vaults of central banks. Okay. Crypto, on the other hand, is owned by the people for the most part. Yeah, governments are finally starting to toe dip here and there. And I'm sure that JP Morgan has a position. This one has a position, yada, yada, yada. But think about the entire crypto market. Think about the $2.6 trillion it now represents. Whether that number is inflated or not is irrelevant. By Tether being a Ponzi scheme is irrelevant. I'm trying to go through all of this stuff for the Bitcoin and crypto veterans in the audience. So none of that is relevant. What is relevant is that the blockchain is immutable. Bitcoin is incorruptible, ultimately, at the blockchain level. And if they're able to get control of Bitcoin through taxation and regulation and all the rest of it, so that they make it impossible for us to interface with quote unquote meat space with it, with their dollar-based meat space, well, that's fine. You drive it underground. Eventually, you're just going to create an underground economy that trades in Bitcoin or some other coin that is easily fungible and more transferable. Just to give an example, if the Bitcoin blockchain can't handle the transaction density, then we move it on to Dash or we move it on to something else. It doesn't matter. But with Lightning Network, we've got plenty of liquidity. So, and look at what's happening with Lightning Network. And look at how quickly Lightning is seeing the density of transactions that they're getting as quickly as they can. The crypto is bringing, and with Lightning and all of these other things, are bringing first world money transfer and money handling ability to the third world at a rate faster than cell phones brought technology to Africa.
Yeah, I just want to quote a figure.
Africa bypassed laying copper lines everywhere for phones, because by the time we got to start putting copper lines in across Africa for phone lines, everybody could just put up cell towers.
Yeah, it was it took a 10, 11 years to actually get to 100 million, right? Bitcoin users. Right. Then it took 18 months after that to get to 200 million, right? Just the exponentiation that you're talking about and the unbanked. So,
we're looking at 4 billion people. I mean, when the aspirations of these European technocrats is insane. But what do they control? 500 million people?
Right. Yeah, right.
And then I go look at Indonesia and I go, that's nice. I haven't even talked about Vietnam, Cambodia,
You
the Philippines,
Thailand.
you will
Thailand, Malaysia, for example. Just these few insignificant places with a few people in them.
Will you come?
I used to talk about this when I used to study. I studied for a while. I worked for a while when I was doing that. When I was working for $5 an article, I was working with a broker out of Vietnam. I learned more about Vietnamese penny stocks than most human beings should ever want to know, and that's serious. I used to do investment reports for European small caps. Vietnamese small caps. Okay, so I know that area of the world at least circa 2012, 2013, 2014 really well. And the way things work over there. I'm telling you, they were the first adopters of Bitcoin as a currency. Like there were Starbucks and coffee shops in Ho Chi Minh City taking Bitcoin in 2013. Okay. The Central Bank of Vietnam, the SBV, was already trying to figure out what to do about this damn Bitcoin thing back then. Okay. Like Davos has no ability to control these people. Like it's so dumb. It's not even to be believed. So we're all worried because we're here in the first world and we're worried they're going to take our Bitcoin away from us. Like, dude, they're going to say whatever we do to ourselves here is just going to ensure that we don't get to use Bitcoin.
Just remember,
but they will.
3 Bitcoin gets you permanent residence in El Salvador. That's all I'm saying. Tom Luongo, thank you so much for actually giving us your time. You're coming back. You know that, you're right. You're coming back
whenever you want, dude. Just set it up, and I'll
definitely
be happy to do it.
definitely
come back. So anyhow, hey Travis,
I endorse you too, Tom Luongo.
Thank you, sir.
To Travis, our engineer.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for another show. Dave Hampton, Robo Recruiter, you were great.
Eternally grateful.
If you're looking for a job in crypto, blockchain, NFT, whatever it is, you call me. And remember, everybody, get whispered.